Wow! One word, one trademark, one icon of comedies that grossed $2.3 billion worldwide. Owen Wilson built an entire career making you laugh without ever seeming like he was trying too hard. The cool guy. The eternal improviser. That crooked smile that turned any scene into something special. But in August 2007, at the absolute peak of his fame, something broke. The cameras stopped. Hollywood went into shock, and Owen Wilson, the man who made entire generations laugh, was hospitalized in a crisis nobody saw coming. How did the face of American comedy, with over 80 films under his belt, reach a breaking point? What was happening behind that iconic wow that nobody noticed? And why, almost 2 decades later, is there still a wound Owen hasn't been able to heal? He has 3 children, 2 boys he loves openly, and a 6-year-old girl who shares his DNA, his eyes, his smile, but not his life. Why? Before we answer these questions, we need to go back in time. Because Owen Wilson's story doesn't start in Hollywood. It starts in a house in Dallas, where a boy learned that laughter wasn't just joy, it was survival. Owen Cunningham Wilson was born on November 18, 1968, in Dallas, Texas, into a family that from the outside looked picture perfect. Upper middle class, educated, cultured. His mother, Laura Wilson, was a renowned photographer whose lens captured the beauty and complexity of life with an artist's eye. His father, Robert Andrew Wilson, ran a public television station and seemed like the model of sophistication and intellect. But inside that house, shadows lived where no camera could reach. Robert Wilson was not simply a father. He was a man wrestling with demons no one in the family fully understood. Depression, bipolar disorder, mental illness that in the 1970s carried crushing stigma and was rarely discussed, even behind closed doors. There were days when Robert's brilliance shone through, when his wit and warmth filled the house with laughter. And then there were the other days, the silent days, the days when he retreated into rooms no one dared enter, lost in darkness that medication could barely touch. Owen, the middle child sandwiched between older brother Andrew and younger brother Luke, learned early that home was not always a sanctuary. It was a place where you had to read the room, gauge the mood, know when to speak and when to vanish. Years later, Owen would admit with painful honesty, "My dad struggled, and when you're a kid, you don't understand it. You just feel it." That unspoken tension became the air he breathed. Laughter was not just joy in the Wilson household. It was armor, a way to deflect, to distract, to keep the darkness at bay. Owen's humor, which would one day become his trademark, was born not in comfort, but in necessity. School became his battlefield. At St. Mark's School of Texas, one of Dallas's most prestigious institutions, Owen was not the model student his parents might have hoped for. He was the troublemaker, the kid who questioned authority, broke rules, pushed boundaries. While his classmates followed scripts, Owen rewrote them. He pulled pranks. He skipped classes. He challenged teachers not with malice, but with a restlessness that could not be contained. The inevitable finally came. Owen was expelled from St. Mark's, not for one single act, but for the accumulated weight of defiance. For his parents, it was humiliation. For Owen, it was both liberation and devastation. Desperate to instill discipline, his parents made a drastic decision. They sent him to the New Mexico Military Institute, a place designed to break rebellious spirits and rebuild them into soldiers. For a free spirit like Owen, it should have been torture. Instead, something unexpected happened. the structure did not break him. It focused him. Away from the shadows of his father's illness, away from the expectations of Dallas society, Owen found space to breathe. He excelled academically for the first time in his life. Years later, he would reflect, "That place saved me in a way I didn't understand at the time. It gave me direction when I had none." After graduating, Owen enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin in 1986. He majored in English, drawn to stories, to the rhythm of language, to the way words could capture what silence could not. But it was not in classrooms where his real education happened. It was in the dorms, at parties, in late-night conversations fueled by cheap beer and big dreams. And it was there, in that sprawling Texas campus, that fate intervened in the form of a skinny, bespectacled film student named Wes Anderson. The two met by chance, introduced by a mutual friend. Wes was quiet, meticulous, obsessed with the precision of framing and the architecture of storytelling. Owen was loose, improvisational, a natural performer who could spin a story out of thin air. They should have been opposites. Instead, they were mirrors reflecting different aspects of the same creative hunger. They began writing together, not with any grand plan or Hollywood ambition, but simply because it felt right. Owen would riff dialogue, Wes would shape structure. What started as a student film project began to evolve into something neither of them fully understood yet. A partnership that would one day redefine independent cinema. Their first collaboration was Bottle Rocket, initially a 13-minute black-and-white short film made in 1992, with money scraped together from friends and family. Owen not only co-wrote the script, he starred in it, playing Dignan, a wildly optimistic amateur criminal whose schemes are as endearing as they are doomed. The short caught the attention of producers, including James L. Brooks, the legendary force behind Terms of Endearment and The Simpsons. Brooks saw something in these two unknowns from Texas. Not Polish, not perfection, but authenticity. With Brooks's backing, Bottle Rocket was expanded into a feature film and released in 1996. Owen was 27 years old, still carrying the scars of his father's illness, still learning how to channel rebellion into art. The film was a commercial failure, barely making back its modest budget. Critics were divided. But for Owen Wilson, it was not about box office numbers or critical consensus. It was about stepping out of the shadows. He later admitted, "I didn't know if anyone would care about what we made, but I knew it mattered to me." And that, more than anything, was the beginning. The failure of Bottle Rocket should have been the end. In Hollywood, a box office bomb often becomes a gravestone. But Owen Wilson and Wes Anderson were either too stubborn or too naive to understand the rules. Instead of retreating, they doubled down. By 1998, they were back with Rushmore, a film about a precocious teenager at an elite prep school who falls for a teacher while navigating the chaos of adolescence. Owen co-wrote the screenplay with Wes, pouring their shared experiences into every line. This time, the world noticed. Rushmore was not a blockbuster, but it was a phenomenon. Critics hailed it as one of the best films of the year. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. The film won Independent Spirit Awards and earned Wes Anderson a place among cinema's most distinctive voices. And Owen was recognized as a serious writer, earning his first Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. At 30 years old, Owen Wilson was no longer just an actor with a quirky charm. He was an Oscar-nominated screenwriter. The kid expelled from prep school was now being celebrated by the Academy. Years later, he would joke, "Turns out all that trouble at St. Mark's was just research." But Owen was restless. He wanted to perform, to embody characters, not just create them. And Hollywood, sensing his unique energy, began offering him opportunities. In 2000, Owen took a risk that would redefine his career entirely. He signed on to Shanghai Noon, a buddy action comedy set in the Wild West, starring opposite Jackie Chan. Owen played Roy O'Bannon, a smooth-talking outlaw who was equal parts coward and charmer. It was his first leading role in a major studio film. The film grossed over $99 million worldwide. Suddenly, Owen Wilson was not just an indie darling. He was a bankable movie star. The offers began flooding in. In 2001, he appeared in Zoolander, alongside Ben Stiller, playing Hansel, a rival male model. The role was small, but Owen stole every scene he was in. But it was later that same year that Owen delivered the performance that would cement his legacy. The Royal Tenenbaums was Wes Anderson's most ambitious project yet. A sprawling ensemble piece about a dysfunctional New York family of former child prodigies. Owen co-wrote the screenplay with Wes and starred as Eli Cash, a wildly successful author and drug addict desperately trying to be accepted by the Tenenbaum family. The character was a tightrope walk, simultaneously pathetic and magnetic, tragic and hilarious. Owen played him with a vulnerability that hinted at something personal, because Eli Cash was not just a character. He was Owen's fear made flesh. The Royal Tenenbaums was a critical and commercial success, grossing over $71 million and earning Owen his second Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. At 33, he had now been nominated for an Oscar twice. What followed was a blur of comedies that defined the early 2000s. In 2003, Owen reunited with Jackie Chan for Shanghai Nights. In 2004, he starred in Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller. But nothing prepared Hollywood for the phenomenon that was Wedding Crashers. Released in July 2005, Wedding Crashers starred Owen, alongside Vince Vaughn, as two divorce mediators who spend their weekends crashing weddings to seduce women. The film opened to $33 million in its first weekend and went on to gross over $288 million worldwide. Suddenly, Owen Wilson was not just a star. He was a phenomenon. His face was on magazine covers. His quotes became catchphrases. He had achieved what most actors only dream of. But the higher he climbed, the more unstable the ground beneath him felt. Owen's schedule became relentless. In 2006 alone, he appeared in You, Me, and Dupree. He was constantly on set, constantly promoting, constantly performing. The laid-back persona that audiences loved was becoming harder and harder to maintain off-screen. Relationships began to fracture. Owen had always been a romantic, falling hard and fast, but commitment terrified him. He dated high-profile women, Kate Hudson, Sheryl Crow, but each relationship ended in heartbreak. Friends noticed a pattern. He would get close, then pull away. By early 2007, Owen Wilson was at the peak of his career. But inside, where no camera could reach, Owen was drowning. The darkness his father had wrestled with was now sitting in his own chest, and he had no idea how to make it leave. By 2006, Owen Wilson had become the face of mainstream American comedy. His name above a title guaranteed box office gold. And then came Cars. When Pixar approached Owen to voice Lightning McQueen, the hotshot race car at the center of their new animated film, it seemed like an unlikely fit. Owen had never done voice work before, but director John Lasseter heard something in Owen's drawl that was perfect for the character. Cocky yet vulnerable, ambitious yet lost. Owen threw himself into the role with surprising passion. When Cars was released in June 2006, it became a phenomenon, grossing over $462 million worldwide and spawning a merchandising empire worth billions. Suddenly, Owen Wilson was not just a comedy star. He was a voice that children recognized. Lightning McQueen's catchphrase, "Ka Chow," became as recognizable as Owen's own "wow." But what should have been pure triumph carried an unexpected weight. Owen later admitted, "When I heard kids imitating Lightning McQueen, I realized I'd become something bigger than myself. And that was both amazing and terrifying." In December 2006, Owen starred in Night at the Museum alongside Ben Stiller. He played Jedediah, a miniature cowboy who comes to life after dark. The film was a massive hit, grossing over $574 million worldwide. But the pace was brutal. Owen was everywhere, all the time, playing versions of himself in different costumes and settings. The laid-back persona that had once felt authentic was becoming a uniform he couldn't take off. In 2007, he filmed Drill Bit Taylor, playing a homeless con man posing as a bodyguard for bullied high school kids. The script was not strong. The production was troubled. But Owen showed up, delivered his lines, and kept the machine moving. At night, alone in hotel rooms or his Malibu home, the mask would slip. Friends who visited noticed the signs, empty bottles, sleepless eyes, long silences where there used to be laughter. Owen was drinking more, not socially but habitually. Not to celebrate, but to numb. He later reflected with painful honesty, "I was playing a character even when I wasn't on set. The real me was buried so deep, I wasn't sure he existed anymore." The romantic relationships that had once brought him joy now became sources of pain. His on-again, off-again relationship with Kate Hudson had become tabloid fodder. They were magnetic together on screen, but off-screen the connection was volatile. Owen wanted intimacy, but feared it. The relationship ended, then rekindled, then ended again. What the public saw was a charming bachelor living the dream. What Owen felt was a man incapable of holding on to anything real. His father's mental illness was no longer just a family secret. It was becoming his inheritance. Depression, which had stalked him quietly for years, now settled into his bones. It was not the Hollywood version of sadness. It was quieter, more insidious, a heaviness that made getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. He kept working anyway, because that was what you did. Because stopping felt like admitting defeat. On the set of Drill Bit Taylor, crew members noticed Owen seemed distant, distracted. His famous improvisation, once sharp and spontaneous, now felt forced. Between takes, he would retreat to his trailer and disappear for hours. Yet outwardly, nothing changed. Interviews were charming. Red carpets were navigated with that crooked smile. Fans saw exactly what they wanted to see. Owen Wilson, the effortless comedy king, living the dream. What they did not see were the nights he sat alone, staring at scripts he could not bring himself to read. The mornings he woke up with no memory of falling asleep. The moments he caught his own reflection and felt nothing but exhaustion. By every measurable standard, he had made it. Wedding Crashers had made him a household name. Cars had made him a cultural icon. Night at the Museum had proven his range. Yet the dream felt hollow. Success had brought everything except the one thing he needed most: peace. The peak, as it turns out, is also the most dangerous place to stand, because the only direction left is down. And Owen Wilson, standing at the summit of his career in early 2007, was about to fall further than anyone could have imagined. In August 2007, the facade finally shattered. Owen Wilson, at 38 years old, reached a breaking point that had been building for years. The relentless schedule, the emotional exhaustion, the unprocessed grief over his father's struggles, the terror of intimacy. It all collapsed at once. He was hospitalized. The details were kept private, as they should be, but the news sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. For the first time in his life, Owen could not joke his way out, could not charm his way through. He was stripped of all armor, vulnerable in a way the public had never seen. His brothers, Andrew and Luke, rushed to his side. His mother, Laura, held vigil. Friends offered quiet support, but the journey ahead was Owen's alone. In the weeks that followed, Owen retreated entirely from public life. Projects were postponed. Tropic Thunder, the Ben Stiller war satire he had been filming, had to shoot around his absence. And in that enforced silence, something shifted. Owen began therapy. Real, intensive, no bullshit therapy. For Owen, that meant facing his father's mental illness and the ways it had shaped him. The fear of becoming like Robert Wilson. It meant acknowledging that the charm and humor he had weaponized since childhood were not just personality traits. They were defense mechanisms. The recovery was slow. There were setbacks, but Owen kept showing up to therapy, kept doing the work, kept choosing honesty over performance. By early 2008, he began cautiously re-entering public life. But he was different. The easy smile was still there, but it was quieter now, more deliberate. When asked about what happened, Owen was remarkably candid without being exploitative. "I went through a tough time," he said simply. "I'm grateful for the people who stood by me, and I'm working on being better." Yet even as Owen worked on his internal world, his external life remained complicated, especially when it came to love. Owen had always been a romantic. He fell hard, loved deeply, and then inevitably pulled away when things got too real. His relationship with Kate Hudson had been the most public example. They met on the set of You, Me, and Dupree in 2006, and the chemistry was instant. But the relationship was turbulent from the start. Owen's demons made consistency impossible. Kate wanted commitment. Owen wanted escape. The cycle repeated until it finally broke in 2007, right before Owen's crisis. Years later, Kate would speak about that time with grace. "Owen is one of the kindest, funniest people I've ever known," she said. "But he was fighting battles I couldn't help him with." After his recovery, Owen approached relationships differently. He was more cautious, more self-aware, but he was also more emotionally available, in his own way. In 2011, Owen became a father for the first time. His son, Robert Ford Wilson, was born to Jade Duell, a woman Owen had been dating quietly. The name Robert was a tribute to Owen's late father. Fatherhood should have been transformative, and in many ways, it was. Owen spoke lovingly about his son in interviews, but the relationship with Jade did not last. They separated when Robert was still a toddler. In 2014, Owen became a father again. His second son, Finn Lindqvist Wilson, was born to Caroline Lindqvist, a Swedish fitness instructor. Once again, the relationship did not endure. And in 2018, a third child arrived. A daughter, Lyla Aranya Wilson, born to Varuni Vangsviratis. This time, the situation was even more painful. Owen initially contested paternity. Eventually, DNA tests confirmed what Varuni had claimed. Lyla was his daughter. But Owen did not embrace her the way he had his sons. He provided financial support as legally required, but remained largely absent from her life. Varuni later spoke publicly about Owen's absence, expressing sadness not for herself, but for Lyla. "She deserves to know her father," she said quietly. Owen did not respond publicly, but those who knew him saw the guilt he carried. By 2019, Owen had 3 children with 3 different women. He was involved in the lives of his sons, present, if not always consistent. But his daughter remained at arm's length. Friends watched this with quiet heartbreak. They knew Owen's capacity for love. They had seen him with Robert and Finn, patient and playful. They knew he was capable of being the father Lyla deserved, but knowing and doing are different things. In interviews, when asked about his children, Owen would light up talking about his boys. "They've changed everything," he would say. "Being a dad is the most important thing I do." But he rarely mentioned Lyla. The omission spoke louder than words. It was not malice. It was fear. The same fear that had derailed his relationship with Kate Hudson. The same fear that had led to his crisis in 2007. The fear of being truly seen, truly known, and found lacking. Owen had survived the darkest moment of his life. He had done the therapy, taken the meds, learned the coping mechanisms, but some wounds do not heal on a schedule. Some patterns take more than a few years to break. When Owen Wilson returned to work after his 2007 crisis, Hollywood was not sure what to expect. Would he still be the charming goofball audiences loved? The answer came in pieces. Owen took smaller roles at first. Marley and Me in 2008, where he played a husband and father navigating life with a chaotic dog, felt almost therapeutic. But it was not until 2011 that Owen delivered the performance that would redefine his career. Midnight in Paris was a Woody Allen film about a screenwriter named Gil Pender, who, while visiting Paris with his fiancée, discovers he can time travel to the 1920s every night at midnight. There, he meets his literary heroes, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein. Woody Allen had seen something in Owen that others had missed. Not just the comedy, but the melancholy underneath it, the longing, the sense of a man slightly out of place in his own life. Owen threw himself into the role with a sincerity that surprised even those who knew him well. Gil Pender was not a buffoon or a slacker. He was a dreamer, wrestling with authenticity, with the fear that his life was a lie. On set in Paris, Owen was different, more focused, more present. Woody Allen later said, "Owen brought a vulnerability to Gil that I had hoped for, but was not certain he could deliver. He proved me wrong in the best way possible." When Midnight in Paris premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May 2011, the response was rapturous. Critics who had dismissed Owen as a one-note comedy actor were stunned. Here was depth. Here was nuance. The film became Woody Allen's highest-grossing movie ever, earning over $151 million worldwide. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Reviews singled out Owen. "Wilson has never been better," wrote the New York Times. Audiences who had loved him in Wedding Crashers now saw him in an entirely new light. For Owen, the role was more than a career resurgence. It was proof that his crisis, his recovery, his willingness to confront the darkness, it had not weakened him. It had deepened him. Midnight in Paris did not just revive Owen's career, it reinvented it. Suddenly, directors were offering him complex, layered roles, scripts that required emotional range. Yet Owen did not abandon comedy entirely. He returned to voice Lightning McQueen in Cars 2 in 2011 and Cars 3 in 2017. He starred in The Internship in 2013 with Vince Vaughn. But he also took risks. He appeared in Inherent Vice in 2014, Paul Thomas Anderson's psychedelic noir. He starred in No Escape in 2015, a brutal thriller about a family trapped in a foreign coup. The choices were deliberate. Owen was no longer chasing paychecks or following formulas. He was building a body of work that reflected who he had become. And then, in 2021, came the role that would introduce Owen Wilson to an entirely new audience. When Marvel Studios announced that Owen had been cast as Mobius M. Mobius in the Disney Plus series Loki, the reaction was mixed. Mobius was a bureaucrat working for the Time Variance Authority, an organization that monitors timelines across the multiverse. But Kevin Feige, Marvel's mastermind, knew exactly what he was doing. Mobius needed to be warm but mysterious, funny but grounded, someone who could go toe-to-toe with Tom Hiddleston's charismatic Loki. Owen Wilson, with his weathered charm and hard-won depth, was perfect. When Loki premiered in June 2021, Owen's performance stunned both fans and critics. Mobius was not a joke. He was the emotional anchor of the series. His friendship with Loki became the beating heart of the show. Owen brought everything he had learned: the improvisation from his comedy days, the emotional honesty from Midnight in Paris, the weariness of someone who has lived through darkness and come out the other side. The series was a massive hit, one of Disney Plus's most watched shows, and Owen, at 52, was suddenly a Marvel star. When asked about joining the MCU, Owen was characteristically humble. "I just tried to play Mobius as a guy doing his job, trying to figure things out. Turns out, that's what people connected with." But it was more than that. Mobius was Owen, a man who had followed the rules, played the role expected of him, until one day he woke up and realized the life he was living was not the one he wanted. By 2023, when Loki Season 2 premiered, Owen's portrayal of Mobius had become iconic, and Owen was now part of one of the biggest franchises in entertainment history. The reinvention was complete. Owen had taken the wreckage of 2007 and transformed it into fuel. Every role since then carried the weight of that experience. He was no longer the charming slacker coasting on charisma. He was an artist, a father, a survivor. In 2025, Owen Wilson stands at 56 years old, a man whose face carries the roadmap of every mile traveled. The crooked nose, broken twice in his youth. The lines around his eyes, earned not just from laughter, but from tears shed in private. The gray creeping into his blonde hair. He looks like a man who has lived, and more importantly, survived. His career continues, but differently. Owen is no longer chasing every offer. The pandemic years forced him, like everyone, to slow down. And in that slowness, he found something unexpected: contentment. He still acts, but selectively. Loki, Season 2 wrapped in 2023, and Mobius M. Mobius remains one of his most beloved roles. There are occasional comedies, supporting parts where he can show up, do excellent work, and go home to his life. "I spent so many years saying yes to everything," he admitted in a recent interview. "Now I've learned the power of no. And honestly, it feels like freedom." That freedom is most visible in how he spends his time. Owen lives quietly in Malibu, in a house overlooking the Pacific. Mornings begin with surfing, a ritual he has maintained for decades. The ocean, he has said, is where his mind finally quiets. His home is filled with books, surfboards, and photos of his sons. Robert, now 13, and Finn, now 10, visit regularly. Owen is deeply involved in their lives, attending soccer games, helping with homework, teaching them to surf. He speaks about them with genuine pride. But there is a photo conspicuously absent from his walls. A little girl, now 6 years old, who shares his DNA but not his daily life. Lyla Wilson remains the wound Owen has not yet healed. Despite years of therapy, despite the growth he has shown in every other area of his life, he has not found a way to bridge the distance with his daughter. He pays child support as required by law, but he has not shown up either. In late 2023, paparazzi photos surfaced of Lyla at a park with her mother. The little girl had Owen's eyes, his smile, his unmistakable features. The internet exploded with commentary. The story cycled through gossip sites for a week and then disappeared. But for those close to Owen, the silence was deafening. He did not address it publicly. He simply carried on, the guilt visible only to those who knew where to look. Friends have tried to intervene gently. "She's your daughter," one told him. "She deserves to know you." Owen's response was quiet, almost broken. "I know. I don't know how." It is the same pattern that has defined his life. The ability to be brilliant on screen and paralyzed in reality. Those who work with him speak of Owen with affection and respect. He is professional, prepared, generous with fellow actors. On the set of Loki, Tom Hiddleston called him one of the most instinctively talented actors I have ever worked with. But off-set, Owen remains elusive. He does not do social media. He rarely gives interviews. When he does appear publicly, it is usually for charity work. Organizations supporting mental health awareness, suicide prevention, veteran services. "I just want to help if I can," he said at a mental health fundraiser in 2024. "I've been through some stuff. If talking about it helps someone else, that's worth more than any movie I've made." That willingness to be honest about his struggles has become part of his legacy. Young actors struggling with depression reach out to him. Parents of children with mental illness thank him for speaking up. Fans who grew up watching his comedies now appreciate him for something deeper, his humanity. Financially, Owen is secure. His net worth is estimated at $70 million. He does not live extravagantly. No private jets, no flashy cars. His Malibu home is beautiful but understated. "Money stopped mattering a long time ago," he once said. "What matters is waking up and not hating the guy in the mirror." Most days, he succeeds at that. Some days, the old darkness returns. On those days, he calls his therapist, goes to the ocean, spends time with his sons. He has learned that survival is not about never falling. It is about knowing how to get back up. His relationship with his brothers remains strong. Andrew and Luke, both actors themselves, understand the industry's pressures. They surf together, share meals, check in on each other. Owen's mother, Laura, now in her 80s, remains a quiet force in his life. And in her presence, Owen is not a movie star. He is simply her son. When asked what he is proudest of, Owen does not mention awards or box office numbers. "My boys," he says without hesitation. "The fact that they're growing up healthy and happy. That matters more than anything I've ever done on screen." The omission of Lyla in that answer is painful, but perhaps it is honest. Owen has learned that pretending to be perfect is more damaging than admitting imperfection. He is not the father he wishes he could be to his daughter, and rather than lie about it, he simply does not speak about it. Maybe one day that will change. Maybe Lyla will reach out when she is older, and Owen will find the courage to show up. Maybe he will never overcome the fear that has kept him at a distance. The story is not finished. But here is what can be said with certainty. Owen Wilson has survived. He has faced the same demons that consumed his father, and he has not been destroyed by them. He has built a career that spans comedy, drama, animation, and the Marvel Universe. He has made millions laugh and made a generation of children shout, "Ka-chow!" with pure joy. He has also failed at love, failed at commitment, failed, most painfully, at being present for all of his children equally. And yet, he keeps trying, keeps showing up to therapy, keeps calling his sons, keeps choosing roles that challenge him, keeps waking up and attempting one more day to be better than he was yesterday. That is the legacy of Owen Wilson. Not perfection, not heroism, but persistence. The crooked smile that hides sadness. The laid-back drawl that masks anxiety. The wow that became a catchphrase but started as a child's attempt to deflect pain. All of it, every piece, is part of the story. And perhaps that is why his films endure. Because underneath the comedy, audiences have always sensed the truth, that Owen Wilson is not playing characters. He is revealing himself. In 2025, Owen Wilson is not the biggest star in Hollywood, but he is still here, still working, still surfing, still trying to be a good father to the children who know him, and wrestling with the guilt of the one who does not. He is a man who learned that fame cannot save you, that money cannot heal you, that the only way through darkness is to acknowledge it, to sit with it, and to ask for help. And if you have followed his journey this far, if his films brought you joy or his honesty brought you comfort, then perhaps his greatest gift is this: proof that imperfect people can still create beautiful things, that broken does not mean worthless, that survival, messy and incomplete as it is, still counts. Leave your thoughts below. Share your favorite Owen Wilson moment. And remember, behind every smile you see on screen is a human being fighting battles you cannot see. Be kind. Be patient. And if you are fighting your own battles, know that you are not alone. Owen Wilson is proof that the story does not end at the crisis. It continues, imperfectly, painfully, hopefully. And that, more than any movie, is a legacy worth remembering.